Rest in peace to a legendary manager that I think belongs in the Hall of Fame.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at 5 Hour Energy. Enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for two to any golf tournament in the United States. Visit 5hewin.com for full rules and entry. No purchase necessary. It excludes the Masters tournament. Ends October 31st, 2025. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever they're calling it these days. And on Instagram, I am your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. But the best way to get a hold of me is right here. We're actually doing a live episode. I don't do many live episodes for some technical reasons, but this is a show I wasn't expecting to do, and I wanted to get it out there as soon as I could. But if you're going to be watching us, if you want to be posting comments, post it here on the YouTube page, and make sure to use that hashtag EverydaySully. That way we can find your comments and see where you are and see what you're doing and see what you want to talk about. Before we get to today's but I'm going to call it, we did our 5 episodes, but this is my 6th one this week. And it's because I feel this person deserves an episode and deserves to be talked about pretty quickly. The trivia question I asked the last time was, what team was the first ever to draw 2 million fans in a season? And our good friend, Cubs fan with an 8, 1908, says, I think it was the Toronto Blue Jays. Actually, they were the first team to draw 4 million fans. First one to draw 2 million fans. Was not during the golden age, was not during the times when Joe DiMaggio and this and that and the other thing. Joshua Nickel 7643 says the Dodgers nearly 60 years ago, I believe. Yes, it was the 1966 Dodgers, the Los Angeles Dodgers, the 1966 Dodgers. They were coming off of the World Series title against Minnesota. They was the days of Koufax and Drysdale, and Don Sutton was now on that team, and they were the first team to draw 2 million fans. And I can tell you that was the 8th year they were in Los Angeles. And I am positive that the O'Malleys and everyone looked around and said, we made the right decision moving from Brooklyn. I'm not saying they did. I'm sure that's exactly what they were thinking. So that's right, the LA Dodgers. I woke up this morning to see that Davey Johnson died. And Davey Johnson was the manager of one of the teams I hated the most growing up. As a native New Englander, I cursed those 1986 New York Mets who defeated my beloved Red Sox, or did the Red Sox defeat themselves? But Davey Johnson was the manager of that team that was cocky and brash and was really, really good. And there are 2 managers ever who have managed the Mets to a World Series title. And they are Davey Johnson and Gil Hodges. Davey Johnson took over the Mets as the manager in 1984, and the Mets had gone through a horrible run basically since the mid-1970s. And by the end of the 70s, they were rancid. But Frank Cashen and company were starting to put together some good draft picks. You know, they drafted Darryl Strawberry. They drafted Dwight Gooden. They made some shrewd trades, bringing in the likes of Howard Johnson and Ron Darling, and they wound up bringing in Gary Carter. 1984, the first year that Davey Johnson took over as manager of the Mets, they won 90 games and suddenly became a contender again. Now, Davey Johnson was a wonderful player in his own right. He played he was part of those fantastic Baltimore Oriole teams. And in fact, in a weird bit of irony, when the Mets won their first World Series in 1969 against one of the great Oriole teams, one of the great American League teams of the 1960s, the 69 Orioles, it was Davey Johnson who hit the fly out to Cleon Jones to clinch the World Series. But he was an all-star with Baltimore on that unbelievable infield of Boog Powell, Davey Johnson, Mark Bellinger, and of course Brooks Robinson, who is arguably the greatest third baseman in American League history. When the likes of the young, the Bobby Gritches of the world started to emerge. Suddenly, Davey Johnson became expendable, and he was sent packing to the Braves. And he wound up playing a little bit with the Braves, and it had one or two really good years with Atlanta, and then wound up finishing his career as a bouncing around between the Philadelphia Phillies and the Chicago Cubs. He made the All-Star team, by the way, as a member of the Braves. His first year as a manager, after going through the minor leagues as a manager, was with the Mets, as I mentioned, in 1984. 1985 was one of the great teams. They were a 98-win team. The Mets were 98 wins in 1985, but they did not make the playoffs because back then there was just East, West, East. There was just 4 teams who made it, and they happened to be in the same division as the 100-some-odd win Cardinals. The next year was, of course, 86, and everything went right in 86. And he was the man who steered the ship. 108 wins. They won one of the incredibly underrated NLCS against Houston. Obviously, the great series against the Red Sox. If the Red Sox had made that final out, a lot of people would have criticized some of his managerial decisions in 86. But in the end, he pushed the right button, certainly in that Game 7. By starting Ron Darling, that didn't work, so he pulled him and brought in Sid Fernandez, who shut down the Red Sox and just kept them until they could finally get to Bruce Hurst, and then just absolutely jumped all over Boston's absolutely beleaguered bullpen and won the World Series. They won 108 games in 86. In the tumultuous 87, which included the Doc Gooden suspension, tons of injuries, tons of infighting, they still won 92 games that year, but of course couldn't make the playoffs because of the way it was set up. 100 wins the next year when they lost that bizarre and underappreciated NLCS to Los Angeles. And things started going wrong in the 89, but I don't blame Davey Johnson, because Davey Johnson was on the Mets managing the team when, for whatever reason, they decided to break up the team, trading away the likes of, they traded away Mookie Wilson, they traded away Lenny Dykstra. They started breaking up the team. The thing that made Davey Johnson, and by 1990, they let him go. Davey Johnson took over the Reds in 93. And we talked about the 1985 strike and the 1984 strike and the 95 lockout. He had the Reds in first place at the time of the strike, and they made it all the way to the NLCS in 1995. But for whatever reason, Marge Schott was hell-bent in getting rid of him. And so they let him go after the 95 season. He took over the Orioles, got the Orioles all the way to the ALCS, and was the manager of the year in 1997 when he got 98 wins for Baltimore. And for whatever reason, the Oriole management didn't like him, and they let him go. He was the manager of the year and was let go. He had 2 years in Los Angeles. One was bad, or one was okay. And then he was out of managing for a while, and then he took over the Nationals. And in 2012, the Nationals made it to the playoffs with a 98-win team. And I am absolutely convinced when the Nationals, they were one strike away from getting to the NLCS. I am absolutely convinced if they got that final strike and got to the NLCS that year, Davey Johnson would be in the Hall of Fame right now. Because he would have taken the Mets, Reds, Orioles, and Nationals all to the National League Championship Series and won a title with the Mets. And he may have won a title with that Nats team. I don't know, and neither do you. But that was the year they also made the decision to not pitch Steven Strasburg, which wound up paying off in 2019. But what good did that do Davey Johnson? I want to talk a little bit about the fact that Davey Johnson belongs in the Hall of Fame. He is a Hall of Fame manager. And we've got to start honoring these people when they're alive. Need a boost to power through the day without reaching for another cup of coffee or an energy drink? That's where Zippix caffeine toothpicks come in. Instead of the crash you get from sugary drinks, Zippix gives you a clean, convenient burst of caffeine anytime, anywhere. And if you're looking for that nicotine satisfaction, they've got Zippix nicotine toothpicks as well. I've got one right in there right now. Now look, I've used caffeine toothpicks before, big meetings, long drives, before I have to teach a class. Get me a toothpick. Boom. Gives me an extra edge without the jitters. They're pocket size. They're discreet, and you even have this fun little container right there to keep your toothpicks there at all time. And the flavors are legit, like peppermint, my favorite. Watermelon ice, spearmint, my second favorite. It's not just energy. They actually taste good. You ready to try them? Go to zippixtoothpicks.com and use promo code LOCKEDON for 10% off your first order. That's zippixtoothpicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. Zippix toothpaste, energy, focus, anytime you need it. I got to take a moment here to point out something. I looked up and I cross-referenced on a couple of different sources about that 2 million fan mark with the LA Dodgers. And Willie Mel, who's a listener here, points out that the 1948 Cleveland Indians, that's what they were called then, drew 2,600,000 fans. Cross-check that with baseballreference.com, the greatest website on this planet Earth. I got that one wrong. Willie, thank you for correcting me. And I got to get on those people who gave me the wrong info. When I'm wrong, I will stand corrected. Yeah, I believe a big factor about having managers in the Hall of Fame is to show that they've taken multiple teams and in different situations to the postseason. Now, if the Cincinnati Reds lost an extra inning game in the NLCS and another close game to the Braves at 95, the 97 Orioles lost a couple of key walk-off games and extra inning games to the Cleveland Indians. If those were reversed, the Orioles would have been in the World Series. And of course, I mentioned what happened to the Nats. If those tiny little things happen, this wouldn't even be a conversation. Davey Johnson would long be in the Hall of Fame. Or if the Mets decided to not break up that team, that most beloved team, because he didn't like their personality, or if Marge Schott wasn't a lunatic, let's just be kind, and let him go when he had the team in the NLCS, or the Orioles, if those teams said, hey, why don't we use this great manager here? Maybe they would have had a year where things would have fallen into place for them. Everything seemed to be on a silver platter for them in 97. He would be in the Hall. This wouldn't even be a discussion. I think eventually he will be. A veterans committee will take a good long look and say, this is an all-star player who took multiple teams. No team in the Washington-Montreal franchise wasn't in the playoffs for a generation. And the Orioles, after letting him go, didn't do piddly-poo for over a decade. 97 to 2012, they had zero relevance. In Cincinnati, the last time the team ever won a playoff series was under Davey Johnson. And oh yeah, the last time the Mets won a World Series was under Davey Johnson. When you're kind of a Johnny Appleseed of Octobers, which is one reason why I believe Lou Piniella belongs in the Hall of Fame. Another reason why I believe Billy Martin belongs in the Hall of Fame. If you're taking multiple teams to the promised land and along the way winning it all at one point, that's a Hall of Fame manager, in my opinion. And Davey Johnson's been sick for a while, and he last managed in 2013 because he was 70 years old, had a good Nationals team, and he handed the car keys over to Matt Williams, who handed him over to Dusty Baker, who handed him over to Dave Martinez, where they finally won. It's unbelievable when you look at the great decade Nationals had in the 2010s, and yet they ran through managers like Kleenex. But the first one was Davey Johnson. They got a swing and a miss in that ninth inning against St. Louis and went on to face San Francisco. Who knows? Maybe the San Francisco Giants in 2012 were unbeatable. I don't know. Neither do you. But the fact of the matter is, Davey Johnson is a Hall of Fame manager, in my humble opinion, and he belongs in and is worthy of an episode like this. Let me just quickly go through who owned baseball yesterday. Geraldo Perdomo went 4 for 5 with a home run. Arizona doubled up Boston 10-5. Quinn Priester pitched well for the Brewers, and they won 5-2. And Kevin Gausman and Vlad Guerrero Jr., we'll talk about them in a little bit. Vladdy homered. People don't like the fact that he styled over his home run. Then don't throw meatballs to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And Kevin Gausman was great over 8. Half wobs to Carlos Correa, who hit a game-tying home run, but the Astros lost to the Rangers. We'll talk about that in a second. Freddie Freeman got 2 hits, including home run, but the Dodgers lost to Baltimore. Logan Gilbert was terrific against the Braves, but the Mariners bullpen wasn't, and they lost. And Yoan Oviedo got 1 hit over 5 innings, but the Pirates lost that game. Let's talk a little bit about the fact that the first game between the Yankees and the Blue Jays, they're going to be playing in just a couple hours. And you know what? 4 games into this gauntlet where they're playing teams like the Astros and the Blue Jays and the Tigers and the Boston Red Sox, where the Yankees are going to have to show they can beat playoff teams. 4 games into it, we haven't learned a lot. They played well against you. They played that terrible game where everything fell apart in the game 2 against Houston, but they rebounded and did well and came back and won that game 3, aided by another home run by Trent Grisham. And then give them credit. They wound up winning that series against Houston, dusted himself off of that second bad game. Max Fried pitched great in the first one. And then they were just the falling apart against contenders again. They got, for a while, they were being 1 hit. They got 1 run, a solo homer. And the Blue Jays batters just wore out poor Cam Schlittler, say his name carefully, because he actually didn't pitch badly, but he just kept fouling pitches off, and doing things like, well, I'm going to hit the ball the other way. Ooh, there's a bad defensive player. I'm going to make sure I hit the ball that way. Let's go take the pitch, and instead of trying to launch everything in the upper deck, let's put it into play and see what happens. At one point, there was a fly ball where Aaron Judge, who needs like 5 cutoff men because his arm is hanging by with yarn on his body at this point. You know, he needs 10 cutoff men. So yeah, they're going to test his arm all the time. And then he did I got it, you got it, as it falls between him and Jazz Chisholm. I don't blame Jazz Chisholm on that because he's not about to collide with Aaron Judge and see him on the 60-day IL. And then, you know, Vladdy Guerrero hits a home run, Styles, and Yankee fans don't like that. We'll stop throwing them meatballs, as I mentioned before. And the Blue Jays found a really novel way to deal with the fact that their bullpen is unreliable. And this is the shocking thing they did. And hang on, folks, buckle up. Do you know what they did? They had their starting pitcher pitch 8 innings. They went to the bullpen for 1 inning, and by that point, it was 7-1. It was mop-up time. It was 7-1 because they bought Yankees brought in Camilo Doval, who stinks. And I've told, he's a major league pitcher, so obviously he's got great talent. But I've told all Yankee fans when they acquired him, you're not going to like him, and they don't. And he put the game out of reach. And so they brought in a mop-up guy for the final inning, but they were able to say, our bullpen's not working, so let's outslug the team and have an effective starting pitcher, and Gosman's a fine pitcher. Let's have him go 8. What a novel idea. How crazy is that? Let's have our pitcher pitch deep into the game so we don't have to use the bullpen. That's something Davey Johnson would have done. But there you go. So we're going to see in a couple hours, the Yankees are going to have to show if they can punch back. If they punch back and win tonight or win this afternoon, then that shows us something. No one expects them to sweep all the team, but they won the first series against Houston. You got to give them credit where credit is due. But they seem to go right back. Whenever they lose, it's always, man, they're a sloppy team. And they were sloppy again. And you're not going to get very far in the postseason if you're trying to outslug the teams. Now, the American League, as we know, is a flawed league. There is no super team. For a while, Toronto is probably going to have the top seed, but we all see their bullpen is horrific. Detroit looked like they were going to be the top seed for a while, but they went through a bad slump. We know the Yankees are vulnerable, and we've seen last night the way that the Astros lost, and they've lost a couple of key games, that they can be beat. Boston, let's not call them a super team, please. And the Seattle Mariners are doing a great Wile E. Coyote impersonation right now. So if you make the postseason in the American League, you have a shot, because there's no dominant team. Which brings us to another Hall of Fame manager, which is Bruce Bochy, who has the Rangers right now, despite all the bad things that's happened to them, despite all the injuries, despite that horrific stretch that they had a couple of weeks ago. It is now. We're going to the second weekend of September. We are deep into the season. There's only like 20 some odd games left in the season, and the Texas Rangers are a half game out of a playoff spot. One half game out of a playoff spot. And they won an extra inning game against the Houston Astros, where they just showed their resiliency. They just showed everything that they can do. And holy Toledo, they have Jacob deGrom and they have Merrill Kelly pitching the way he did. He was tremendous yesterday. And Nathan Eovaldi and Bruce Bochy. It's an every other year situation. Seattle is, whose pitching staff, is going to pitch well the other day. Their pitching staff is handing this spot, which at one point they're thinking we may win the division. If the Mariners lose today and the Rangers win, the Mariners are out of a playoff spot at this point on the 6th day of September. And the Rangers may sneak in. And if they sneak in and see a vulnerable American League, and you'll just see Bruce Bochy cracking his knuckles and said, every other year, huh? Every other year. All right. Best of 3 series. I'm going to throw Eovaldi and deGrom and still have Merrill Kelly ready to go game 1 against your ace. Every other year, folks, it's Bruce Bochy. And the American League, because no team has taken the ball and run away with it, are super vulnerable. I'm telling you, my pick of the Rangers to win the pennant at the beginning of the year suddenly looks like it may still happen. And guess what? There's another American League team that is knocking on the playoff door while we were all napping. And it's glorious. All right. Let's talk about 5-Hour Energy. It's time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. The great ginger and lime flavored shot brings the iconic taste of a golf course favorite to a non-alcoholic boost. Perfect for sinking birdies or making great moments with friends. It's a hole-in-one for the energy game. Whether you're out on the course or just need a little extra push to get through your day, 5-Hour Energy Transfusion delivers the clubhouse flavor you love without ever leaving the green. Now, golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors. The great ginger lime flavor of 5-Hour Energy Transfusion gives you the best part of your clubhouse go-to without leaving the course or chasing down the bev cart. Now you can amp up and have more fun. Just buy, snap, and enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for 2 to any golf tournament in the USA. Tee up that trip. Visit 5hewin.com for full rules and entry. No purchase necessary. Excludes the Masters tournament. Ends October 31st, 2025. Do you know that Kansas City is now only half game out of a playoff spot right now? Kansas City, who had a terrific stretch in the middle of August, only to go on a little bit of a face plant. And we're on a 3-game losing streak. And then they won that last game against the Angels. They won last night 2-1 against the Waka pitched well against Minnesota. They're playing Minnesota and Cleveland, 2 teams that are really, very vulnerable at this point. And at this point, it's really about piling up wins. Now, you can't do the whole they're playing this bad team and that bad team, because we've seen the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Arizona Diamondbacks have been showing up left and right. But there's a critical series that is going to happen starting September 16th, where Kansas City is going to be playing the Seattle Mariners. Nobody thought that was going to be a critical series a few weeks ago, but now with the Mariners clinging by their fingernails to that final playoff spot, that and the Royals are just 1 game out. The series that's going to start September 16th, 17th, and 18th, so it's going to be about a week and a half from now, could actually be a mammoth head-to-head series if Kansas City can win the series against Minnesota and Cleveland and hold their own against Philadelphia. And by the way, there's another team. Now, they lost yesterday, but up until yesterday, the hottest team in the American League were the Tampa Bay Rays. And oh my God, the possibility of the Tampa Bay Rays making the postseason is so delicious to me, because I just want to see them have to deal with a minor league ballpark in a postseason series. That's just me. That's just me. Oh, by the way, I'm going to do a show about this. I've talked a lot of trash about Fisher and the A's and the Las Vegas situation, and I will continue to do so. But it does look like from the ballpark cam that they are indeed starting construction on a stadium in Las Vegas. It does look like their construction, if you look at the ballpark cam, it does look like there are parts of the stadium that are starting to rise up from the dirt, kind of like the Fortress of Solitude coming up from the ice in Superman. And so, all right, looks like they're actually building something there. Good for them. A lesson for some teams right now. A lesson for some teams is never lose the dumb games, no matter where you are in the season. The San Francisco Giants were a playoff team going into June. They had a 13 and 14 May. They were sub 500 in May. They're sub 500 in June. They had a terrible July, 9 and 15, and they were a mere 500 in August. So that's a chunk. May, June, July, August. That's 4 months of the season where, 4 months out of 6, they were a sub 500 team. And they had dumb losses here and dumb losses there. They haven't lost in September. And in fact, the stretch that they've been on since going on that horrible run, and they got a walk-off loss to the Milwaukee Brewers on the 22nd day of August. Do you know what the record has been since then, including last night? Since the 22nd day of August? The San Francisco Giants are 11-1 since then. They've won 11 out of 12 games. Now, they are still on the outside looking in. And the idea of them making up 4 games against an absolute nosedive that the San Diego Padres. Remember the Padres were in first place by themselves? Just a couple of weeks ago when they were doing those series against Los Angeles? Remember that? It seems a long time ago. They've lost 9 out of 12 since then. Now, the Giants are going to have to continue this long, wild pace because they're 4 freaking games behind behind San Diego. And that is tough to make up. They're going to have to keep up this unbelievable pace. And they have 0 head-to-head games with San Diego for the rest of the way. So that's tough. And did I mention tough to do? But make this be a lesson for everyone. Think about all the months I just rattled off where there were a game under 500 here, 4 games under 500 there, even 500 there. Never lose those dumb games. Never lose those games. There's so many times I was up in the Bay Area for the whole summer and I was hanging around Giant fans. We lost that one, another dumb loss. Those all add up. Let's just take those 4 months. Flip 1 dumb loss a month to the win column. I'm not even saying to flip them all. 4 ones where the bullpen blew it, or you made a dumb error, or they made the dumb decision as a manager, or whatever. 4 of them, just 1 a month. And the Giants would be tied for a playoff spot right now. That's what would be happening. The game, you say, it's only April. It's only May. Those add up. You're going to lose games. You're going to sometimes be up against a pitcher who's just on fire. And there's going to be some games where you just don't have it. And you lose 9-0. That's why I don't find those games to be that frustrating. We just didn't have it today. The dumb losses, the teeth grinders. If you lose a teeth grinder in April, you're like, what are you going to do? Yeah, you have a lot of games to make up for it, a lot of time to make up for it. Or you can say, we're banking those games in the win column in April, May, June, July, because they all do count. And look at the Giants right now. 4 months of the season, they were sub 500. And a lot of dumb games they lost. I can't tell you how many times my mom, who never misses a Giants game, go like, they blew it. They blew it. One, they blew it, you flip a month. And the Giants would be tied for a playoff spot on the 6th day of September with about 22 games left, 22 days left in the regular season. Those games count. Play hard. You're going to lose games. The greatest of the best team I ever saw assembled was the 1998 New York Yankees. The second best team I ever saw assembled were the 1986 New York Mets, as managed by Davey Johnson. And they lost. Just don't lose dumb games. Ever. You're going to lose games. But don't lose the dumb ones, because they're going to bite you. And I bet if we go back and we look at the Giants season and we can pick one dumb game in May, June, July, and the first half of August, you'll find multiple dumb games. Flip one, and suddenly we may see the Giants in the postseason. It's probably not going to happen, because 4 games is a lot to make up in 20 days with no head-to-head matchups. And if they wind up doing it, it's because San Diego lost its way. And I don't think the Padres are this bad. I think the Padres are on a rough stretch right now. But even with this rough stretch, they have a 4-game cushion. And this will haunt the Giants, who are looking unbeatable right now. But it might be too little. And did I mention too late? Hey, just sort of bring this up before we talk about it. It's another big moment on Locked On college football fans. Locked On and Fire TV present the College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside 2-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts. A college preview only Locked On can do. Catch college football kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. And let's talk about the trivia question. We're talking about World Series champions. And this one, I'm pretty sure I got the facts wrong on the other one, and I apologize. I did the correction live on the air. How many pitchers who threw the final pitch of the World Series are still on the team that they won with? The pitcher who threw the clinching pitch of the World Series, how many of them are still on the team where they won with? We know it's not Walker Buehler, who threw the final pitch of the 2024 World Series and is with Philadelphia right now by way of Boston. So of all the teams that have won the World Series and all the teams that had a pitcher standing on the mound with their arms up saying, we won the World Series, how many of those pitchers are still on the team where they won the World Series with? That's the trivia question. You can follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter, or whatever they're calling it these days, and on Instagram. Just bit my tongue. This has been a live show, and follow me at follow me at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Talking about Davey Johnson, who I think belongs in the Baseball Hall of Fame. We're doing it live today. We're doing it live. And the teams that are knocking on the playoff door. And is it too late for the Giants? This has been Locked On MLB. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.